Ladies and gentlemen, a man with one of the best names in track and field, Stone Smith, joins the podcast today. How you doing, Stone?
Dude, I'm alive. It's a great day to be here. I'm excited.
Stone Smith. I mean, genuinely, that was one of the coolest names in track and field. Your parents were cooking something up. Do you think you have one of the best names in track and field? And yeah, what's your take
Dude,
on
I
your
hope
name?
so. I mean, my dad's name's David, and so he just didn't want me to be like the 1 billionth David Smith that there is in the world. So he was just trying to do something different.
Today's conversation is going to be centered around some news that broke this past week. And I told you this before hopping onto the podcast. We're just going to keep it conversational and see where it flows from there. So let's start out with this. Where were you when the news broke? And for those who are completely unaware of what happened this past week and have no clue what I'm talking about, can you kind of give some background on the news that the SEC dropped last week?
Yeah, man. So honestly, I think I was in class or I was walking around campus or something. People were just typing in the track group chat. And it's kind of something that had been being talked about for the past week or so before the kind of the whole world kind of figured it out. And so I don't know where I was exactly, but I remember seeing it and being like, hold up, like that's not real. Like no way, that's crazy. It doesn't make sense. And what the news is basically the SEC is in talks right now, and I don't know if anything's officially been decided. I sure hope it hasn't, but it looks like the SEC is going to be moving to 10 roster spots on the men's side for cross country and 35 roster spots on the women's side for cross country. My bad, for men's side on the track. And so what the NCAA did at the beginning of the summer or into the summer, what they did was they said that it's going to be 17 and 45. It's kind of part of this whole new idea about revenue sharing. It's kind of all in this big thing that's kind of happened because of NIL. And so when it is 17, like everybody was kind of like whatever. Like there wasn't too big of a freak out because people thought that this was going to be guaranteed money for all the athletes. Like they thought it was going to be like 17 full scholarships for every single person and 45 for every single person. And at a school like mine, where we only have 13 people on the cross roster right now, and I think we have 43 men on the track roster. Like nobody was freaking out. Like it was just going to be a good thing. But what people don't understand is that it's 17 and 45 scholarships that are allowed to be offered. That's like the most you can do. It's not guaranteed. So schools don't have to give out full scholarships. They can give out the proportionality like they've been doing in the past. And so it's actually not as good of a thing as people think. But the NCAA is painting, and the SEC is painting this picture that, like, hey, it's like great, like everybody's going to be on the full ride, when that's not the case. And it's just reducing your roster spots for track and field and cross country.
I'm trying to play devil's advocate here and try to understand where the NCAA and SEC is coming from. Is there any positive to limiting a roster like this specifically for cross country and track and field? Like, because you would think that they would act within the best interest of the sport and growing the sport, when in reality, this is like suicide.
Yeah, for sure. No, I've done a lot of research, and I was looking for a positive. And I mean, you could argue for some of these programs that have like 30, 40 kids in the cross team. There's like a couple. I think Portland's really big, for example. You could argue that like maybe a positive would be more individual coaching. But at most schools, like these coaches are doing everything they can for their athletes to win. And like, for example, for our program, like our coaches are great. Like everything's super individualized. Like everything's hands on. And so, I mean, maybe at some schools it could be beneficial, but I think that would be kind of the only thing. And it just comes with like an absolute onslaught of negatives.
Let me ask you this, from as far as you can tell. So this news broke in terms of the SEC limiting the roster to, what was it, 10? And then how much for track? 10 and 35?
35.
Yeah, 10 and 35. Is this kind of going to become a precedent for other conferences, or is this unique to just the SEC?
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked that, because that's something that I'm guessing you saw my post. It was crazy. I think like 600,000 people saw or something, which is a blessing, an absolute blessing. So I think hopefully the right thing gets done. But yeah, what people are commenting, what they don't seem to understand is that they're saying it's going to like disperse talent. But if you look at the past and like what's happened with other sports, like in the past, like just a couple years ago, Texas and Oklahoma joined the SEC. What happens? Like conferences, or the Pac-12 basically gets decimated because all these schools are trying to join into like the bigger conferences, like Stanford and Cal. They joined the ACC, You got Oregon and Washington who are now in the Big Ten. And so everybody's kind of over the place. And I think it's going to be something similar where if the SEC has this plan, that I think that the other conferences will do it too. And that's something that I was trying to communicate is it's not just like the SEC is doing this and it's like, oh, sucks for the SEC guys. No, I think that it's actually like bad for the sport because it's going to probable. I mean, I don't know this for sure, but it's going to likely end up being the same way across the board.
Someone who commented on your post, Connor Burns, who's been on the podcast multiple times, and that guy's a total jokester, so I'm not sure how serious of a comment this is, but Connor commented on your post. He said, every single person has completely missed the point of this. The only reason men's rosters are smaller than women's rosters are because of Title IX. Otherwise, it'd be 1745 across the board. This has nothing to do with budget. What's your response to that?
Yeah, and I think that I'm glad he brought that up because I think that's what a lot of people are thinking. And if you go in, I actually printed out. I read the Title IX document to see if that was the case. And I'll give you a quick example real quick. Like Ole Miss, for example, they have over 120 football players on their team right now. If for people who are listening and they don't know all the roster changes, football is actually going to 105. So football is going down. So it's not because football is getting more players kind of thing, because they're actually getting less here. And it's all to do with proportionality. So like at a school like Alabama, for example, I think they're like almost 60% female and 40% male. You got to have roughly 60% female athletes compared to 40% male athletes, and that's across the entire board. And so I think that it could maybe be a Title IX problem at some schools, but that's not the case at schools. And like even if it was a Title IX problem, a way that you could easily solve that would just be add another female sport. But schools obviously aren't going to do that because they don't want to spend the money to add female sports. So I don't think that it is a Title IX issue. I can read you the legislation here, but I think that it's actually just a money issue. So
basically, from someone who's just putting the pieces together here and curious, so is like football screwing over basically men's sports because they're taking all the percentage of the 40%? Because like cross, right? No reality would even the best program in the country want to have 80 people, right? Our sport does not need 80 people on the team. Football, there's a conversation for that, and that's going to take up majority of 40%. Is that where this is coming from?
No, like I said, I don't think that is the problem at all, because like right now, Ole Miss has even more football players than we do, and we still have 43 people in the track team. So we're still able to do that. So I don't think that necessarily football is screwing us over. I think that honestly football is benefiting us because like the major part of the legislation that came out with the money sharing thing, the revenue sharing, is that schools can now disperse 22% or 20 or 22%. I think it's estimated roughly be about $20 million of profit that's made from sports to other sports. And I think that the problem is that they do want to give all that money to football. And so like if the NCAA is saying like, oh, like you can have 10 full scholarships for track or for cross country now, whereas before you had 0, or you could argue the 12.6 for track or whatever. They're saying that like they don't want to give away more than that percent, because maybe they're looking at it like, oh, if we have 10 people, we got to give away, if say scholarships $50,000, we got to give away $5 million. But if it's 20 people, then we got to give away $10 million or whatever. So, or however much it is. I think I did that math wrong. But that's not actually the problem, because they don't have to give up that full amount. So it just kind of seems to be some inconsistency in the thought process. And I think that the problem is they're not even really thinking about it that much. I mean, I don't know what's going on behind these closed doors, but I think that it's just kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, we could do this to make it seem like it's fine, if you know what I'm saying.
What's the biggest, if you've heard from the opposing side, what's the biggest reason, and I kind of maybe asked you a similar question a few minutes ago, but what's the biggest reason behind limiting roster spots? I know you shared kind of the idea of the scholarship piece, but like the difference between 17 and 10 really isn't that much, but it is a lot for the sport, right? There's 7 varsity spots. Yeah. What's your take on that?
Yeah, no, I think you pretty much hit it right on the nail, or right on the head, because I think that a lot of people would look at it and they would be like, oh, 7 spots, like that's not much. But 10 people race at SEC Cross, 10 people race at ACC Cross, like 10 people, that is the number that you race at these big meets. You know, if you're like me and like you get hurt and you're down a guy, well, that's automatically eating into your team. And so, whereas if you have 17, you have a little bit of room and you have the availability to like develop people. It's kind of going to change the way cross country works into like the win now mode where it's all about performance, which is good because it makes people run fast, but it's bad because it doesn't lead to development. And so you're not going to actually have American guys getting better, I don't think.
Is the concept of a walk-on completely obliterated with this news? There's no room for walk-ons anymore, right?
Yeah, I don't think that walk-ons even exist anymore, and that is a problem. It's not as big of a problem in track and field as I think it could be seen in other sports. I mean, you have, for example, football. I guess like the main sport that we're talking about here. You have like a lot of the best guys by the time they graduate senior year walk-ons. I mean, and it happens in track too, but a lot of times because scholarships are like broken up for track, it ends up being small amounts that disperse throughout. So there's not like, I don't think there's a crazy ton of walk-ons, but it does. Yeah, it really does eliminate the value of bringing in a kid who's 18 years old who ran whatever 905 and developing him to be a guy that can run 1330s mid 1340. It's kind of taking that away. And so it's like if you're not like one of the top 10 high schoolers in the country, then schools aren't going to want you because they're going to be like, well, it makes more sense for me to go get somebody who's already been running for, who's 25 years old and has been running for 7 more years and can actually like help us do something. And so I think that the problem lies in the fact that people or athletes are just not going to get as many opportunities. American athletes, or especially just younger kids primarily. And like college athletics was kind of initially created as not like an amateur, but it's like it's a stepping stone to professional sports. And I mean, I know you're a huge fan of sports. Like you watch how the NCAA develops. Like the top of the NCAA is a professional level. I mean, you have people like Nico Young who got 10th at the Olympics. Like the guys who are winning those meets, they are some of the best in the world. You have the guy that came to Texas Tech. I mean, he was a 59-minute half marathon. That's like it's ridiculous. So like it is professional. It is basically professional level, and that's fine. That's okay. But when you're taking away the opportunity for athletes to develop and have that the possibility to become a professional, because you're basically only employing professional athletes right now, like that's a problem.
People can try to cancel me for this, but that's okay. Bring it on. I will not be canceled. What is your take on, you kind of opened this can of worms, foreign transfers and how the 10 spots could radically transform that world? Because I see this many issues. One, and by the way, I think there are definitely circumstances where foreign transfers make sense. And I think as a society in America, we should look to give outsiders the opportunity to be educated. In the United States, we've got the best education system. The NCAA is second to none in terms of like an amateur system and league for development. So I'm all for foreign transfers, but I think over the past few years, we've seen this influx where it's kind of making the NCAA a joke. It's kind of like within running how NIL is to football, where it's like, yeah, don't know the Texas Tech kid's name, don't know him personally, but like a 59-minute half guy, like it's just not a level playing field. That's one thing. And then the second thing, and this is way more controversial, but like I'll stand on it. A lot of times we don't know these people's ages. Their ages, a lot of times, because they're coming from foreign countries, aren't necessarily like for a fact that age. And so we have 18-year-olds sometimes competing against 26, 27-year-olds. It's like this is not a level playing field whatsoever. And so when you only have 10 spots and these schools want to compete immediately, they're gonna go for people, who have ran crazy times. I know that's kind of like my takes all over the place there, but any thoughts off of what I just said?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that you hit it pretty right on. And quick shout out, I love my international boys, Jack, Toby, Johnny, and Ilias. They're on our team. They're the best people in the world. I love those guys to death. And I'm glad they're here. And I think that you're right. I think that the definition for amateurism in the NCAA is a little questionable. I don't exactly understand it completely, to be 100% honest with you. And I think that there could probably be some some sort of like regulations to like make that a little bit stronger. But yeah, I'm for foreigners to participate. I think that it's great. I think that it opens a lot of doors for them. That I mean, like the opportunity to go to college in America is incredible, and like if people want that opportunity, if that's like their dream, like I want them to have that. But it doesn't make sense. It doesn't really. What I don't understand is when you have people like the 59-minute half marathon guy. He should be signing a pro contract. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like he's that good. And so that's just like a little bit confusing to me. That's what I would have to say about that. And I don't think it's as big of a problem, but I think it is very unfortunate for Americans who aren't going to get the opportunity to pursue semi-professional and then professional athletics if they don't even have the opportunity to play the bridge gap. It's something I talked about in my post that I think is extremely important, and you kind of bounced around, is the way track and like cross country work. So, I mean, you look at the best guys in the world. A couple of years ago when Jake Whiteman won the 2022, I think it was 2022, World Champions 1500, he was 26 years old. And so you kind of look at these guys, and most of the time when they're winning like the big races, like they're at like the peak of their career, they're in their mid to late 20s. And you got some guys that are like even 30, they're still able to run. And that's because it takes trials of miles, like that's what people say. Like it takes you running that many miles, like consistently, and just slowly getting better to get to that next level. And so the problem is when you have people like Joe from Arkansas, who's 18 years old, and he's running 35 miles a week because he's 18 years old, and that's all he knows. Like he's not gonna do well when he's like expected to run 100 miles a week as an 18-year-old if he wants to be even close to the people who are coming in. So that's what I would say to that. It's just different how the sport just works differently.
Yeah, again, very controversial take, and I'm very open-minded and would be curious to hear the other side, but I don't think there should be a place in the NCAA for kids. I don't know, maybe I'll change on this age, but like if you're 25 and up, like either go pro or move on, in my opinion. Like I think there can be exceptions, but I think those exceptions, I think it should be like applying to a college where you make a case for why you're like exceptional or in exception, and then some board or something rules on it. Of course, then, there are other issues that arise, and how is the board judging you, and is it fair? But I acknowledge that some kids have specific things happen to them in life or different situations where their timelines push back a little bit. But I just feel so wrong seeing, and people have told me confidentially in the NCAA, like it feels weird being 19 racing a 26-year-old, like who's got 2 kids. It's like, it doesn't seem like a level playing field. Developmentally, you are a completely different individual. So I don't know. I definitely think, I don't think it'll ever happen, but I would highly vouch for there being some sort of age limit in the NCAA. Again, it's a amateur education system, and there should be, I think, limits put in place on, what's fair and what's not fair. And I think you get to a point where it becomes a joke. It's like a mockery of the sport when you're just 27 and a completely different age than some 18-year-old. Or, using a football example, like Ryan Williams from Alabama, that kid's 17. Like Cam Rising from Utah should just move on. Like, I don't know if he's like an 8th year. Like, either go pro and be a backup or like hang it up. Like, stop milking your time in the NCAA. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong for that.
Yeah. I don't have too much to add. What I will say, though, is Ryan Williams is from the same place for me. So shout out Mobile. Let's freaking go. Yeah. There was like a
dog in high school.
There was a luncheon that I went to with him. It was like track athlete of the week or something. He was like 15 and I was like 18, and I was like, bro, this kid's gonna be in the NFL one day.
Something I want to dive into further in regards to the spots on a team is just breaking down, and I'm sure a lot of people are aware of it, but talking specifically maybe to high schoolers or people who are older who just don't understand. 5 score in cross country, 7 are varsity, and generally 10 is travel squad. What people fail to recognize is a lot of times there are injuries on teams. There's like random sicknesses that pop up on teams. There's life circumstances that pop up on teams. 10 spots is merely you're playing with fire if you're only having enough spots for a literal travel squad, and you don't have, it's really tricky. It's not a lot of room for leeway there. I think you had this on your post. You could speak to the track side of it where it's not even really enough to fill an event. Can you speak to just like, yeah, the numbers don't make sense sustainably. Like there are probably going to be teams that have 4 injuries and are just absolutely cooked.
Yep. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm glad you talked about this. So, first of all, practice is gonna not be fun. Like let's just go. You had 10 people out there, dude. I show up to practice. It's like 20 of my best friends, and we're all like having a good time. I love every second of it. When it's 10 people, like the mood's just different. Like it's gonna be like all right, like it's gonna be a business. It's gonna be a business. So from that right there, that is a problem. And then yeah, on the track side, when you're at 30, it was 35. So it's 1.667 per event. So there's I think 21 events or 20 events. And yeah, dude, that's just not enough. Like if you have a group of people training and you only have 1 or 2 people in the group, isn't like how are you gonna get better? Like how are you gonna have people to push you to get better? I mean, our workout groups are like 5, 6, 7 people deep, like, and that makes it happen. Like that helps you get through workouts. And if you don't have that, I mean, maybe people will be as good, but it's going to be hard to progress. And you're going to have, like I think we have 8 coaches on the track side, right? And so you're going to have 1 coach for every, was that 3 athletes, 4 athletes? Like, I don't know, dude. And so that makes me worried. Like I said on my post as well, like if there's less athletes, there will probably be less coaching jobs too. That's just going to be the nature of the beast.
You mentioned this a few questions ago, just in regards to the developmental aspect of the NCAA currently and how this kind of takes away from it. I wish I would have done enough research before this to have some solid examples, but I know they're out there where, like you said, a lot of kids come from high schools where they didn't train incredibly hard, and it is a progression to get to where you want to be in college, and that's what college is for, progressing you into the athlete that you want to become. And this kind of takes away, I mean, there are, I think, numerous examples of Olympians, Olympic medalists who weren't all that good the first 2-3 years of college, and it took that time. What this does is kind of removes them out of the sport or puts them in lesser programs that probably don't have the coaching and resources that will elevate them. What's your just general take on how this could ruin the legitimately future Olympians because we're not going to have any room for development?
Yeah, I think that one of the greatest things about the NCAA is what it does for the U.S. on a world stage. I mentioned in my post that there was 34 SEC track and field athletes that medaled, 30 of which contributed to the U.S. medal total, which is absolutely huge. I mean, a lot of times, like countries like status, it's like it's measured by like what kind of nuclear weapons they have and like some other things, like how much money they have, and then it's like how well they do at the Olympics, And so taking this away, like it's definitely going to affect us. And I think an example to what you were talking about, I think a great one is Nick Simmons. He went to some random D3 school. I couldn't even tell you the name, or D2. I don't know. But he ran 152 in high school, something like that. Or he ran 150, but it was really late. And obviously you saw what he developed. He ran 142 point, people didn't really come within that 2012 race until last year. So yeah, there are people that can develop. That's just one example. There's, like you said, there's a bunch out there. And so, yeah, it takes away the developmental side. And that is definitely going to hurt. That's definitely going to hurt America on the world stage.
What can be done present day? Has this been decided on? And what are the conversations like with teammates and coaches?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do right now. I don't know what to do. So I'm literally just trying to push it out to as many people as possible and figure out, like, hopefully the people who are making these decisions, this is like they saw the post. I mean, it was actually, like I said, it's crazy. 600,000 people, dude, that's insane. Like, that's nothing for you. I'm sure you got like 100 million followers on Instagram. But like for 600,000 people to see that, like, I really hope that somebody who can do something, I'm just trying to bring the issue on the table. I mean, I don't know what the SEC's mentality is, but they're talking about all this and they're not saying anything to anybody. They're like, it's just whispers getting out. And so my hope is that, like, obviously people care, because like 600,000 people saw it and 98% of it was on people's stories who they're reposting because they're like obviously this is a problem. And so I think that it's just got to fall into the right person's hands And so what I can do, all I know that I can do is talk to as many people as possible, try to put it front and center. And so the SEC can't just, or anybody can't just brush it under the table and act like nothing's happening. And I mean, as I'm saying all this, like I like love the SEC. Like I grew up as a little kid. Like I was in my little living room in the bottom of Alabama. I was like standing there. I was throwing like the Nerf football, running across the living room to catch it and act like I was going to be an SEC athlete one day. And so I love the SEC, and I just want that dream to be available to everybody. I mean, I think that obviously not everybody's going to make it. I mean, I think everybody wants to be a D1 athlete. Not everybody, but a lot of people do. Everybody's got their own dream. But a lot of people want to be a D1 athlete. And when you take this away, it's not just going to affect track. It's going to affect football. I mean, it is. Like, Ole Miss is dropping 15 roster spots next year. I think more than that, but at least 15. It's going to affect baseball. Baseball's going down 7. And so it's going to affect a bunch of different sports.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I would assume that NCAA is the most profitable it's ever been. Why are we limiting spots across sports if we have more money than we've ever had before?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a great question, and I don't have the answer to it. It doesn't make any sense to me. I'm very confused. I think that the idea maybe is that they want to give full scholarships to everybody, so everybody can be like a full-time athlete, like whatever.
But like, do the athletes themselves even want that? I think they'd want bigger teams and the like walk-ons want to walk on to a team if they can. They'll find a financial path to pay for their college. They would take that any day over not even having the chance to. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong there, but like the 10 through 17 spots, I think would do anything to rep the Ole Miss jersey, even if they're not getting any scholarship money. Like those spots would be filled by high quality athletes. They'll find a way. Yeah, it's always been the case.
Yep, I agree. It doesn't make any sense. And I don't know. I do not know.
What can people do out there who are listening today? I'm sure a lot of people feel
talk to everybody, dude. Talk to everybody. Talk to everybody, and maybe the right person will figure out. I'm gonna try to get in contact with some more higher overarching people that have a lot more power than I do. People who like decide on some of this initial stuff with like the money, the revenue sharing stuff. It's like senators and stuff. So, I mean, if you guys like care about this and you have a connection to somebody, just put it on their plate and see what they say. Like people in important positions like want to help people who are passionate about what they do. And so it's like I look at Dominic and like I'm like absolutely like super impressed because you're 19, right?
Yeah.
You're 19. You didn't go to college, right? Right. And you're pursuing this crazy dream, right? Like you're pursuing this crazy dream to be a podcaster. Like that is incredible. We need way more people to do things like that. So if you're passionate about it, like if this is something like this matters to me, if it matters to you, which I think it does, then just go talk to people, go talk to people and see what you can do.
In Stone Smith's ideal world, how many roster spots would there be, and what would the breakdown look like of those spots, scholarship, non-scholarship, etc.?
Yeah, that's a great question. Man, Stone Smith's ideal world, that is crazy. I don't know if I should have this much power, but dude, if I did,
because obviously there's a limit, right? We don't want. Yeah, it doesn't make sense to have 50 kids on a cross team, like.
Yeah. You don't need more than 50. You definitely don't need 50. I mean, you probably don't need 30 either. Like, honestly. I mean, I think that the sweet spot is around, 17 to 23, probably. Just enough because you want it to be small enough to where you're getting individual coaching, but you also want it to be big enough that you got a group of guys to hang out with on the weekends, people to spend time with. And you want it to be like a brotherhood. And when it's a 10-person business, it is not a brotherhood. I think that's the thing that Ole Miss does the best, honestly, is that we have like literally the greatest group of guys in the world. Like we love each other, like we'll die for each other. Like that's the intensity and energy you bring. And I just don't know if you can have that when everybody's individually just competing for a spot like it's a job. And so ideal, I don't think you need 30, but I think that around 20 probably pretty good.
You can keep any confidential conversations you've had confidential, but what's the conversation like with your immediate coaches and take from the coaching level?
Yeah, I mean, they don't know too much, and that's pretty much all I'm going to say. It's nothing like everything that we're hearing is just like whispers that are getting out the door. Unfortunately, I don't know who's voting. I don't know what they're saying. I don't really know if anybody. I mean, I don't know if it's really out there. I mean, I'm sure somebody knows who's voting, but I don't. If you do, please like tell Dominic. Dominic, tell me. I'm gonna send him an email. you know. But yeah, that's all I got to say about that.
Talking about you and where you're at within this, a lot of people I feel like don't know that you potentially would be affected by this. Can you share where you land on the team and your kind of unique even situation now where you're currently going through an injury? And if we have a 10-person system, like it is going to be incredibly cutthroat to the point where someone like you could get cut from a team. What's your emotion on all of that? Obviously, you've worked your ass off throughout the years to even be in a position to run for Ole Miss. What's the emotion there thinking about this dream potentially coming to an end because of some dumb decision by someone who's not even involved in the sport?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's a question that I think has been kind of circulated a lot. I mean, I think you got some people like, you saw the post, like people just like rage baiting crazy stuff in the comments. You probably know what I'm talking about. And there's some like Let's Run article and like, dude, like this kid runs 4:17. Yeah, I had a really terrible indoor race last year, but I ran 4:17 as a sophomore in high school. So, but all that aside, like I would be affected by this. I mean, I am injured right now. I redshirted pretty much all of last year because I'm one of those guys that they're developing. Like, I mean, I was good in high school. I ran 9:08, 15:21 as a junior, but I mean, that's not going to do anything in the NCAA right now. We're too good. And so I'm just one of those developmental guys. And right now, being hurt, like I haven't done anything for the team. I mean, I think that if I was healthy, that I would be on the SEC team, and then I think I'd be a little bit more secure. And I think that I can have a great track season. There won't be a question come next fall. But as of right now, yeah, I mean, I'm one of those people on the chopping block, straight up. That's part of the reason I said something. But I think that another reason I said something, and like the reason I'm like sitting here having this conversation with you, is because like I'm confident and I know that like what I do in this world isn't necessarily like determined like by me. Like my purpose in this world is like to share the love of Jesus Christ, and that's not just track. So honestly, I'm not worried because like my hope like resides in Jesus, and like that's my purpose. So if I'm not doing this, like it's just an opportunity for me to go out and immediately pursue my like career dream and have more time for that. So I'm not worried, but I love this sport so much. It's given me so much, like the relationships, especially that it's given me. Like even like right now, like being able like to meet you like halfway across the United States, like that is such a blessing, and I just want that for other people too. And so, yes, I probably am on the chopping block, but all I can do is all I can do. And my head is in a great space, and I'm just going to keep doing everything I can to get back, hanging out with my boys every day at practice. I mean, I've had a dream. I've had a couple dreams where I'm just doing easy runs with my friends. It's like kind of sad, but like I want to be there, and I'm going to make the most of every single moment. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot of people out there like me. I mean, there's people who've put in like hours and hours and hours into the sport who won't get an opportunity in the future if this goes through. I want to say like I'm not saying I'm going to get cut. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen, but like right now, if it was to happen today, I should be cut. Like that's the way it's going to go. So
we talked about how this could set a precedence in the NCAA with other leagues, conferences, but I'm curious to get your thought on if this doesn't really change other conferences and it's exclusive to the SEC. How much do you think it'll level the playing field specifically within running, or conversely, D2, D3 schools will start to get some of the crazy recruits?
Yeah. I mean, I think that if it does trickle down, which I do think is very unlikely, to be completely honest. I mean, I think it's very unlikely, but if it does, I think there will be some more dispersion. I think that the bulk of the SEC programs will go to track-based programs, like a lot of them are right now. Ole Miss, for example, is mostly just throws and distance, but you got like Auburn's a sprints program for the most part. You got Florida's a sprints program for the most part. I think you're going to see that because those guys, it's just a little bit easier to cross over events and thus score more points in track. And so, yes, I think that distance running will kind of be dispersed across conferences. And I mean, I would say that would probably happen if that's what you're looking for.
What would you say to a listener out there who's discouraged by this news, maybe in high school, junior or senior, and right on the cusp of being recruited to an SEC school, and that was their dream, like you, growing up?
Yeah.
But they see this news and they're like, I'm just good enough to make the squad. Is it worth, putting my hopes on the line within the sport to then get cut a year later because I didn't develop quick enough?
Yeah. Scared money don't make money, dude. That's just how it goes. So I'm a big proponent. Like I said, like I love what you do. Like you pursue your passion, your dream. If that's your passion, your dream, dude, go for it. I mean, if it doesn't go the way like you want it to, you can sleep at night. Regret is 1,000 times worse than failure. So, dude, if that's your dream, go for it. I mean, no matter what it is in your life, that's the thing that I try to preach the most is like if you have an opportunity, take it. It's not guaranteed, but maybe like this all will like work out and you would have had a spot, but you didn't go for it. So that's what I have to say to that.
Obviously an incredibly accomplished athlete to make it to the point of running for a crazy prestigious athletic program like Ole Miss. What are some of the biggest lessons you've learned along the way to get to this point in the sport?
That's a great question. I actually almost quit senior year of high school. I haven't told this story to very many people, certainly not publicly, but I was committed to Auburn for 6 months. And I was told about halfway through then, or after that 6 month mark, after signing day, that I no longer had a spot, or I could come, but I'd be a walk-on, something like that. And like I was like, dude, I've been committed for 6 months, and it was because of a coaching change, and I mean, I'm at peace with that now. But I was like, well, I'll just run for senior year and call it quits. But I had a phone call with my dad, and I remember like literally sitting on the phone like in tears, like actually like straight up crying. And I was like, you know what, screw it. Like these next like few months, like I'm just gonna give it everything I have and see what happens, because this is something I've been pursuing for like the last like 4 years. It's like something that's like been absolutely poured into so much. And then I mean the next half of the year was great. I ended up winning like 4 state titles that year, and 3 of which were individual, one on the relay team with my boys. It was lit. And so I would say that, dude, it's gonna suck. Like you're gonna get punched in the face. But if you're willing to fight and you're willing to go for what you want, then anything's possible. I really am a believer in if you're confident and you work hard and the Lord's willing, everything's on the table.
Stone, final question for you on a lighter note, ending on a lighter note. The question I ask every single guest on every single episode: if you had Gordon Ramsay coming over to your house for dinner, what would you choose to make for him?
Dude, okay. So I was told about this question, and I actually had a little bit of time to think about it. So I did not cook at all. Do you cook?
Yeah. I live by myself, though, so.
Okay, so you're a chef like that?
I'm a chef. Chef Don.
Let's go. Yeah, so I'm not a cook. The first time I've really been cooking my whole life is this year. Now that I'm in an apartment off campus. And so I miss my mom for her cooking.
That's so good.
But I think I would just go to Walmart, buy the most expensive steak I could possibly find, just toss it in the grill. That's about it.
It turns out fine. I love it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man.
Well, Stone, really appreciate you taking the time to, first off, before we close out, any other notes, thoughts, or, call to action for the listener?
I think we pretty much summed it up. I think that if people look into it, like really look into it and do the research like I have, there really isn't a pro. I mean, I do think I'm a pro proponent. Like people just said, a lot of people in the comment section just said, just get better. And like, I honestly, I love that energy. That's the way like the world should work. Like you got to work if you want something, but it is a multi-year process to do that. And so I would just say, guys, do the research, do the research. If this is something you care about, talk to as many people as possible, spread the news. We don't want track to die in America. So that's about it.
I love that. Stone, really appreciate you taking the time to share your story, share all these insights that you've really dove into. And I mean, dude, I could see you single-handedly saving this effort, which could have, catastrophic events and effects if it goes through. So really appreciate your work to, quite frankly, save the sport. I know that's pretty blunt language, but I truly think this would be terrible in so many ways if it goes through. So appreciate you using your platform for good, and you're an amazing kid. Really look up to all that you're doing, and excited to see all the ways the Lord uses you in the coming months. So keep crushing it, man, and know I'm always in your corner. Big things ahead for you.
For sure, man. Hey, I appreciate you too, dude. You do so much. You got one of the biggest sports podcasts in the world, and for that to be with running, that is absolutely insane. Talk about good for the sport, man. That's you. So I appreciate you.